Okay.
We
All right. Well, welcome everybody. Today we're here another episode of the Race Tech Info Tech Tips with Bob and Chad. However, as you can see, we're missing Chad. Chad's in a severe thunderstorm and sounded like he had some problems with electricity. And Chad's going to join in with this when the storm passes, if it does pass. Otherwise, I want to welcome Jordan Grabouski, three-time IMCA national champion. How's everything with you today, Jordan?
good. Excited to be on the show. So been looking forward to it.
Well, I'm excited to have you here. Apologize that Chad wasn't able to be on here, but hopefully he'll pop in here soon. Um, One of the things that, like when you and I talked the other day, I kind of wanted to have a segment that was more on the driver's point of view. We get a lot of information, or we get a lot of people that ask chassis questions, about left rear bite and birdcage angles and all kinds of technical stuff. But I think it's with your experience at such a young age and your success, I thought it would be a pretty good idea if the people come on tonight and they maybe have some actual driving questions that when you get into situations, that type of stuff. So, did you go racing this last weekend?
No, we stayed home. We had my niece's graduation, and but we're gonna race here Thursday night at Columbus. US 30 Speedway has 1,000 win the mods, and I think we're gonna take our stock car and Saturday night we're gonna go to Eagle and take the modified and try out our luck with a 305 sprint car there Saturday night. So it'll be kind of fun, exciting to get back to a little bit of normality with all this COVID stuff going on, and kind of excited to get back to racing and get in the groove of things.
Yeah, it is. Like Marshalltown here in Iowa starts their season opener is Friday night. Deer Creek, home of the Harris Clash, which let me remind everybody is August 4th. Um, they have their season opener this Saturday night, so Minnesota's opening up. So it's pretty exciting. Last weekend there was quite a few racetracks going on. There's a 3-day deal at Stewart they raced last night, they're racing tonight, and racing tomorrow night. So a lot of the tracks are getting going. I saw that you actually even went down and drove a customer's car down in Arizona and won down in Arizona this off season or
Yeah,
preseason
a couple weeks ago we went to New Mexico actually.
or New Mexico. Okay.
Went down and some good customers of ours have GRT cars. Bought a new one. Went down and had a little fun. Went to Cardinal Motor Speedway. Toby Herring promotes that deal and stuff. We had a blast, man. It was really fun. Little racetrack and high banked and fun and racy. We were able to pick up with a win on Friday night, and then Saturday night we ran fourth. So we had a lot of fun and didn't tear too much stuff up. And hopefully sometime they'll invite us back down there.
There you go. So tell me, what's it like to be a two-time IMCA national champion in one season, winning that national championship with your modified, and then backing it up, winning with the stock car? Tell me a little bit about your stock car.
Well, the stock car was just out on a whim and had fun with it and started the year off so well that we just couldn't stop. But the modified, we had a great season, and the stock car, we had a great season. But the stock car is just, for me, it's so much fun to drive just because everybody's so equal. The cars, I don't know. Everybody asks me what you love about stock cars, and I can't explain it, but it's so much fun because you race side by side with people, and it's just different. Your car's not on the ground, bouncing the right front off the ground. It's more like driving a boat through the corner, but it's just a ball. I think that's one of IMCA's best classes that they have is the stock car division, and got everybody pretty darn equal in that thing. So I just love to drive the stock car, and ever since we got a Big Johnson stock car, and now GRT's building them, we've had a lot of success and have a pretty good package, and it's a lot of fun. But we definitely needed this off season to regroup a little bit we ran ourselves pretty thin over last year. So these extra couple months of a break or a breather has not been a bad thing. Especially we had a little girl in December, and so it's been crazy to think that she's already 6 months old.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. They grow up pretty fast. What how many races did you run last year?
Between the modified and the stock car, it was well over 100. I mean, for sure. But we more or less ran two cars every night. So it was over 100 races. I don't know. I'd have to look it up, but it was a grind, man. I think my wife was ready to pack my bags and send me out the door, especially being pregnant and us racing two divisions 4 nights a week.
I could see where that humor could all come into play. Yeah, uh-huh.
I think uh, I
I thought
think
maybe that's why you were racing so much.
yeah, just to stay away from her. She'd kill me. No, not at all. But she loves it. She's just as competitive as I am and loves it and eats it up. And we're excited here in a couple weeks. We're going to go to 141 in Wisconsin for their
Oh,
10,000.
cool. You bet.
So there's a lot of big races and a lot of stuff coming up as long as everybody stays healthy and everybody so a lot to look forward to. So
Yeah, this it's kind of like that deal. Or once we get going, there. I was looking at the calendar the other day, and I'm like, man, I don't know. I need to be a little younger to be able to go to all of these events. I was amazed that Bobby was showing me some of the stuff on the calendar, and I'm thinking, well, you go, boy. He's actually over at Marshalltown tonight. They've got an open practice, and we're doing some shock testing with Jake McBurney with his new Skyrocket car, and so that's been fun. But and tomorrow night we're going to both go to the Bill Davis Memorial in Stewart. That I don't know what that pays or whatever, but I know they're going to have a pretty good car count. And have you ever been to Stewart?
I never have.
Oh, you've got to do that.
That's what uh,
You,
my brother-in-law when he used to race hobby stock. They talked about going over on like Easter afternoon one time. They went over there and just said they had a ball. So I gotta, I know Mike does a heck of a job at the racetrack and always puts on a good show. So I need to make it over there. We should have went for this stock car deal, but we've been so busy at work, and in fact I'm still at work. And they just brought me some banners and some stuff, but just haven't had time to really travel and stuff. But we need to get over there for sure.
yeah, you need to put that on your bucket list. It's Mike has really done a great job with that place, and it's just a fun little place. And I mean, it is small, but it's like Macon, Illinois almost. But boy, they really race good and they have a good time. I watched part of the stock car feature last night, and it was pretty good.
That's
So anyway, if any of you guys have any questions for Jordan or any questions for me, go ahead and we'll try to take care of your questions as they come in. What so how's it like having an additional member to the family now?
well, it's definitely it definitely puts a little different, you know, when you're used to doing your own thing and going at your own pace and racing all over the country. It's a little different, eye-opening experience. But there's nothing better than seeing that smile on her face when you come walking in the door or whatever. But it's gonna be fun. So she's already getting old enough. She kind of has a little unique attitude and smiles a lot and is happy. So she definitely gets that from me. That's why I tell her mom, anyways. But so, but
Well,
no,
she's pretty cute, so she's got to look like mom.
yeah, no kidding, no kidding. No, that it helps having a good. My wife is probably super mom, so that definitely helps, and a lot of lenience to being able to go racing and work on the race cars and being at work all the time. But it's definitely fun, and never thought I'd love anything that much until you look at her smile at you. So it's pretty cool, pretty exciting to have a little family like we do.
Yep. No, it is. It's a whole different perspective. It makes you think of the things that you never thought of how important they really are. Kids are pretty special.
Yeah,
Um,
I actually sent um, Kevin Yoder was asking about her today, and I have a picture. I'll try to show you. Um, I sent him a picture. She's got a little um, she's kind of a little chunk, but that's her in her race car.
oh,
She's
awesome.
ready to go to 141 with her little.
Go to 141. All right.
That's awesome. So
Yeah. Well, that's good. So now your hauler is also now a baby containment area too. Then.
yeah, I think yeah, we're gonna have to have like a some toys, and definitely might look a little different in the inside of it this year. It's all good though. It's awesome.
Yep. Yep. That is for sure. Well, here's a question for you about a stock car. What's a good rear percentage and how much bite to run an IMCA stock car? What's your recommendation?
The rear percentage, I'm gonna have to look at my notes to be honest, but I'll find that out. I'll answer his question. But I always start. We've just been starting with right at about 100 pounds without the driver in the car when we scale it. So that's a good place to start, and then we kind of adjust it from there throughout the night. If we need to add more, if the track gets slicker, or if we need to take it away. But we've always been starting right around that 100-pound mark without the driver.
That seems to be a pretty common mark with the stock cars. That's kind of what I've heard. 100 to 120 pounds seems to be a pretty common number. Um, okay, I got a question here. Is a half-inch trail too much for a USRA B mod with a stub turned 1 inch? Yeah, I would say that if you've got a stub that's turned 1 inch plus a half an inch of trail, that's the car should turn pretty easily. There should be no problem with it turning. Myself, a lot of times we found with some of the turn stub and with the USRA, you don't have a big spoiler on the back of there. So, we've kind of found that sometimes with the turn stub cars, we're right on the verge of pretty much either straight up or even a little bit of lead in the car when the racetrack gets slick. Jerry says, I see a lot of your schools on car technology. Is there a class for driving technique? I hear get track time, but if you're doing the wrong things behind the wheel, you won't be able to know what to change. Jerry, that's a good question. Um, I really don't know. There was some driving schools there for a while where you could actually bring your car and they would work with you. I know Kevin Shaw used to do one. I don't know if Kevin's still doing that type of stuff or not. What I would probably recommend is, just seeing if you can find a driver that's willing to help you and kind of, share some knowledge with you and work with you and answer your questions is going to be your best bet. If there's ever any test and tune nights at any racetrack, man, I wouldn't miss them. I mean, if you're a new driver, you cannot beat laps. I mean, the more laps you can run, the more repetition you can do, the better you are. What's your opinion, Jordan?
Yeah, that's. I think I've learned a lot of stuff. My guy that I've always went to is Terry Phillips. Which there's not a better um, guy in my opinion to learn from. But the biggest thing is it doesn't matter. You can sit there and you can teach it in a class or tell somebody how to do it, but until you go make laps out on a racetrack or a practice day or different things, that's the only way to really get seat time, in my opinion. And some people pick it up really fast, and some people it takes years to do. I remember when I started in a modified, I I struggled pretty good, tore a lot of stuff up my first year. Just didn't know the limits of it. We were used to racing mini sprints and stuff that you just run around there wide open. Well, you go run around there wide open in a modified, and you wreck some stuff pretty fast. So it took us a lot of seat time to slow down and to go fast. Is kind of what I'm getting at. So.
So how long you been running a modified, Jordan?
when I the age rule when I started was 16. I think
Okay.
it's what 14 now.
Yeah, I
Is that
think so.
in IMCA modified? So I had to wait till I was 16, and when I was 16, we ran spring nationals at Beatrice. And I didn't even make a lap in my first heat race. I spun out before we even took the green. Never even got a lap in that first heat race. So it wasn't a very good start for me. My first weekend at the spring nationals, but it's been a pretty fun experience. But so I'm 31 now, so that's what 15 years.
Yeah. I thought you were about the same. Bobby's 32. I thought you guys were the same age. Because it seemed like you were coming up about the same time as I was racing with him with go-karts and stuff.
How many years have you been?
How many years have I been doing this?
Yeah.
40.
What's
40 years.
what's your drive every day to get up and do it every day and deal with us no listening racers? That's a nice way to put it.
Well, there is some days that you do have some questions. It's just, I love the sport. I love talking to guys. I can't say there isn't times where I wouldn't want to put my hands around their throat and say, "What are you thinking?" I've actually said that numerous times. Like the great Jeff Taylor says, "Yeah, and you don't sugarcoat nothing. You just say it how it is." And I said, "Well, there's no reason to beat around the bush. I mean,
Right.
and I've had some pretty unique experiences, like working with Brett Moffitt and, and that those kind of things. It just, getting to know you and knowing you over the years, watching you grow into this sport and stuff. It's pretty cool. And from my perspective now, it's pretty neat to watch people like Chad and people like that build a successful company and still have the passion for this sport that I have had, because you just gotta love it. I mean, like I said, there's times where I'm thinking I'm at a racetrack, I'm getting home at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'm thinking, Bob, don't you kind of think you're getting a little too old for this stuff? But I keep coming back for more, and I look forward to it. I really do.
Awesome.
We got a question here. I was looking to put a pull bar in my car, but it doesn't look like I have a lot of clearance over the center of the rear end. Is there a measurement that best from the center of the rear end to the pull bar mount, and what's a good angle to start? Well, in my opinion, that pull bar range, if we can get in that 28-inch range, in that range somewhere is pretty good. 15-degree angles, kind of what I like to see. I'm not real big on real short stuff, and I'm not real big on a lot of angle. The shorter it is, the quicker it reacts. The more angle it has, the quicker it reacts. I think it makes the driver's job a little easier if we can kind of tone some of that stuff down and make him more comfortable. Rhonda wants to know where Chad is. Well, Chad is in the middle of a storm. So hopefully we'll be on Chad will be coming on us pretty soon. We'll have to see how the weather is. It's one thing nice about this whole year. We've had COVID for I don't know how long, and we were all secluded for quite some time. And now we watch the new stuff on TV that's going on right now, and you just kind of have to shake your head. And of course, with the weather, that's always another element that we've had lots of here lately. Do you guys think a new or newer car is a must-have in order to be competitive in a USRA A-Mod class? I have a 2011 Shaw car. Hate to fight an uphill battle if the geometry has advanced so much. Well, the thing of it is, guys, I'll be honest with you, the way everything goes today, there's so much technology poured into these cars. I'm not going to tell you that some of those old cars don't work pretty good, because I've seen some of those cars do a pretty darn good job. Some of the new stuff, there's just new things about it that make it work a little bit better. I would have to say with a USRA deal, when you can put a spoiler on a car and some of those type of things, I think that kind of helps, but the newer stuff isn't always the answer, but most of the time with the technology and there's just, well, like last week we had David Stremme on here, and he was talking about the next day they was going to Penske's pull down rig and stuff like that. And so these chassis builders are busting their tail to build the racers a pretty high quality piece and still give them something that's reasonably affordable with whatever you call reasonable anymore. But so I would definitely race what you could afford to race and make sure you can afford to put tires on it and those kind of things. What's your opinion, Jordan?
I think the biggest thing is the newer cars have so much more adjustability built into them. I mean, to give Chad a little plug, the shock mounts, the adjustable shock mounts that he makes for the front of our cars and stuff, I think that has a lot to do with adjustability of fine tuning, our cars, where back in the old days, you just had a shock mount on there. In 2011, you didn't care how long your left front shock was or right front shock. So I think a lot of that is just the newer cars have so much more adjustability and you can fine tune them and that's what we do. Seems like you don't move very many bars, 3 or 4 link rods or anything anymore. You do it more with shocks and load numbers and stuff like that to fine tune our cars these days.
Yeah, that's very, very true. Does extra track time with the stock car help make your modified setup decisions easier or harder?
Actually, we laugh about this because my guys think that it actually keeps me from dialing myself completely out with my modified because I'm in my stock car, not making dumb adjustments and overthinking things, sitting there thinking about it for longer. So the laughing joke of our race team is that at least I can't touch my modified while I'm in my stock car or overthink it while I'm sitting there bored waiting to go out.
So in other words, that's kind of like that old adage where if you wanted to get something done on the car, you sent the driver to the concession stand. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah.
Keeping him out of the picture?
Yeah, just let him go race his stock car so he doesn't worry about his modified.
That's actually a pretty good idea.
Yeah.
I could see the benefits that your guys see in that. Yeah.
Usually after a heat race, you kind of know what the track's going to do and what you want. So right after the heat race, you say, this is what we need to do for the feature, and you just need to stick with that plan because every time you overthink it, you always dial yourself out,
Yeah. When you're on your third change before the race starts, yeah, that's kind of iffy.
Yeah, no kidding.
Running a Pennsylvania, Ohio stock car, do you have a particular angle you like your right upper or your right and left upper arms to be set at? What this class is, Jordan, is basically their rear suspension is like the 4-link OEM suspension, only they can run trailing arms, but the design is the 4-link upper. And then the rest of the car kind of looks like a modified, or I refer to it as a sport mod. Pretty neat class. Upper angles, the upper angle is really what kind of determines your side bite. Don't you agree with that?
I agree. Well,
go ahead.
I can't really answer his question honestly though because I don't know what upper angle, because we can't change ours. So
right.
But I would agree it would definitely be a side bite factor, especially the right rear upper. So
I would have to say the upper angle, whatever stock is pretty darn good, and I think it's around 5 degrees, if I'm not mistaken. So, but anyway, updating an older A-mod with Weir's 9-inch pull bar plates. Where's the best position to start the pull bar?
He's got a lot of holes in his pull bar plates, I'm pretty sure, doesn't he?
Probably.
Knowing Chad?
Chad's got quite a few. We always kind of used that 11-inch number, but I know a lot of people have different opinions on that. I know I couldn't. I mean, I think the standard GRT hole is right in that 10.5 to 11 inches,
That sounds right. Yep.
something like that. So that's where I would start with it. I mean, that's a pretty good starting spot. Um, and I usually like to see, a person start out with the, left to right smack in the middle, right over the top of the drive shaft. In my opinion, is a great place to start. If the driver likes a tight race car on throttle, you can move it a little to the left. If he likes a tighter race car off the throttle, you can move it a little bit more to the right. It just depends on whichever tire you move it closest to, it's going to influence that tire one way or the other.
Right.
For a newer driver, where's the best place to start on the brake bias? Front to rear pressures. And is there a benefit to the ratcheting style bias?
I don't see any benefit in the ratcheting style bias, to answer that question first of all. But are you talking about a ratcheting style bias?
Yeah, I've seen one of them. I don't actually know who actually makes it. We use the one from Joe's. It mounts nice in the car, and it's got a little bearing in it, and it's pretty smooth. But pressure wise, I mean, under braking, you're not going to see brake pressures much over 100 pounds. I mean, unless you're really, I mean, when you're actually racing, if your rear is 100 pounds and your front is 50 pounds, that's kind of a normal place to start. Um, I would say most people, the old rule of thumb back in the school of thought for some people were 4 turns off the rear.
Right. That's pretty close. I always do about 2, but just to keep when you go all the way to the rear, it kind of gets into a bind sometimes, with the way you got your brake bias. But I always go 2. I start at 2 turn, all the way to the rear, and a turn or 2 off the rear, and that's where I always start. Seems like with a stock car, to answer their question about a stock car, though, it seems like you start more like 5 turns to the front. Just the stock car needs just a little bit more front brake than a modified.
Yeah, there's not quite the downforce, plus there's not the rear percentage. So that would make sense. When adding rounds in the right front to achieve a certain load number on the load stick, do you add or remove rounds in the other corners to maintain ride heights?
It just depends what you're trying to achieve. If you're trying to load a soft spring, or unload a stiffer spring, usually you mess with one corner at a time anymore.
Right.
Where ice cars are, to answer the question truthfully, but you usually just focus on one corner and don't do the rest of them.
Yeah, when you're using the load stick, that's what I recommend is one corner, because first of all, unless you had the car on the scales, you wouldn't know what the others are doing, but you're focusing strictly on loading that right front corner. And so that's why you're using the load stick. The rest of the stuff at that point in time doesn't really matter. Do you flatten your J-bar out on a rough racetrack or put angle in it?
I'd take J-bar angle on the frame side out of it.
So you would raise it up on the frame side?
No. I'd take it, like if you're up 8 inches on the frame, you go to 7. You'd actually
take a little angle out of it. That makes sense. Yeah. What front and rear stagger do you run in a stock car?
I've came to the front. You can't really tell. It seems like the more front stagger, for some reason, the better the car turns in the corner. But it seems like if you get over 2 inches in the rear, it's really gets taily off. So it seems like kind of the sweet spot in a stock car is around 1 inch to 1.5 inches in the rear, and about as much front stagger as you can get is kind of the best feel that I've had.
Good to know. QTM Brakes is the one that makes that ratcheting style. I knew I had seen that before, but I've never we've never actually installed one, so I don't know a whole lot actually about it. So how do you get the car off the corner? A-mod open motor has no bite, off, just wants to spin. Well, the smart remark would be I'd get a crate.
Right.
uh,
Or let off.
or let off the gas.
But no, that's it's an honest problem, that we used to have with our open motor stuff, that you just, in the slick, you just never could get enough traction. And then we get these crate motors and can't ever turn. So it's a legit problem.
Well, like I'm trying to, like I've explained to people, the biggest thing is that, your open motor, you're on 7,800 RPMs. Your crate motor, you're running 64. So just the RPM range is a substantial change, and it's just like with the sport mod guys that have an open motor that runs 72, 7,400 compared to their crate motor. The RPM range does a drastic difference in how the car responds because of where the torque is in the motor. And if we get to run an open motor, we get a little bit of, or we don't get a spoiler. And if we run a crate, we do get a spoiler. Now, I'm not saying that this is in your division. The open motor, the bigger the spoiler, the better its chances are. But work with your motor guide. Try to get, like some kind of a camshaft that's maybe a little bit less on the bottom and has more open end than it does a little bit less low end. That's to work on the car. That's a struggle because the tires that we have to run today, we're pretty limited in what we can gain. What does it do to help get off the corner in the stock car setup wise? And he's talking about, oh yeah, it was IMCA.
IMCA stock car.
Yep.
It seems like to get off the corner, you can put some rebound in the right rear shock. That definitely helps plant the right rear and has more traction. The biggest thing, people are getting a little soft with the right front springs, I feel like, and it does still take traction away just because you don't have the mechanical advantage of a pull bar or like a modified, So I think sometimes people get a little carried away with softening the right front spring, trying to make them act like a modified, So that's a couple things that you could definitely helps you get off the corner.
And Troy wants to know if this is just all IMCA talk. It does not need to be. Biggest thing would be, though, like Troy, if you've got a question, make sure we know what sanctioning body you're running under. Otherwise, we're liable to assume it could be IMCA if we don't know differently. Cam that open motor down, needs smooth horsepower is what Bruce had to respond to that earlier question. And that's the thing, the crate motor. Do you think it's harder to drive the crate motor? What do you think? What did you have to change on your skills to drive the crate motor when you went to a crate versus the open motor?
Oh, definitely just not being able to muscle the car or make it do things that you just, you can't just on a big cushion just go in there wide open and expect it to turn, cut across, do things in traffic that you get yourself more in trouble with the crate because you can't lift, and the biggest thing is just it just feels so weird when you gear it to get on the chip getting in the corner. That's the biggest thing you got to get, and it's an advantage to use the chip to slow you down getting in the corner. So that's just something that took a lot of getting used to and learning how to drive with less horsepower. It's kind of like driving a go-kart. Everybody's all the same horsepower. So
sure. Thanks, Pat. Pat Fagan says hi.
Tell Pat hi. He's a great guy.
Jeff wants to know what's a good left rear bite starting point for an IMCA modified on a small, dry, low bank racetrack.
Well, I think still the old rule of thumb Now, a lot of that's going to depend if you're scaling with the driver or without the driver.
True.
Um, Without the driver, we always started around, around that 40 pounds a bite mark is always still, I think, one of the good places. If you're out in left field, you just go back to that and tune from there.
Yeah, and with the driver, it would be up around 90 to 100 pounds, correct?
Correct. Yep. Always adds about 50.
Yeah, because the biggest thing is you usually when you put the driver in the car, you increase about 2% left side weight. So have you had the opportunity to do any late model racing, Jordan?
No, I drove Jason Krohn's car at Silver Dollar Nationals a handful of years back, but that was probably one of the most fun things. You strap in an 800 or 900 horse and go around I-80, which is fast,
Yeah.
modified. You know what I mean? So that was probably the coolest opportunity that I've ever had in a big boy late model. I always tell Phillips to let me drive his late model, but he just laughs at me every time. So I don't know when that opportunity will ever come.
Well, persistency. I mean, just keep picking on him. I mean, just say, hey.
I've been persistent. He just won't ever give in.
He's probably the only one that's more persistent than you.
Probably, you're right. You're right.
Kyle wants you to know that he loves watching you race at Beatrice. Clint's got a question. What would the highest rear percentage on an A-mod with an open motor or a crate motor? Well, of course, the open motor is going to probably require more rear percentage. A lot of those guys will run upwards around 58%. The crate, most all our stuff is in that 56% range to start with, because you're going to burn off fuel and probably be down around 53.5 to 54 at the end. Logan's got a question. USRA B-Mod open motor. Thoughts on the traction bar, AKR Phillips bar. What does it do to handling? In other words, that bar that goes from the dash bar down to by the right front motor mount.
Okay.
What does that do to handling?
Well, to me, it makes the car more rigid, so it reacts to adjustments more. If you change 50 pounds on the right front spring or take 50 pounds away, I feel like every car is different. There's been times that I'd leave that Phillips bar in there and you just put a zip tie to hold it in, so it's actually not doing anything when a car is new. And then after 20 nights, then you really bolt it in and put some preload to it to make bring the car back. If the car has 20 or 30 nights on it and then you wrecked it a whole bunch of times, there's so many variables there. But I think that Phillips bar, from what I've felt, is just makes them just a hair more rigid and makes them react to change just a little bit more is what.
I would agree, and if I don't have a way to actually draw a diagram, but if you imagine this, you're putting a bar that goes from the right front to the middle of the dash bar. Well, then there's that inch and a half by inch and a half square tubing that goes from the dash bar back to the main cage bar behind you. And then there's triangular bars that go to the left rear and to the right rear. So all of that just ties that in just a little bit better. And I firmly believe that from what we have found, you take the bar out, the car doesn't seem to have quite the traction that it has with it in. And I just think it's because of how the frame loads. We had one on the Jig a couple of years ago. It was a car that just came in over the winter to kind of get refurbished and everything. And I was just playing with it. Went to take that bar out, and that frame probably moved almost a half an inch. And so there was actually pressure on that bar, and you could see after we took the bar out, it was actually bowed slightly. So at once upon a time, they must have had some effect someplace. Troy's got a question. Wasota USRA big spoiler GRT race car, 3-stage AFCO spring bar versus the GRT pull bar. which do you think would be the best in their condition? They do have, like I said, they've got a big spoiler. It's kind of the USRA type rules. A lot better tire.
They do. They do. They run the bigger chain link Hoosier
Yep.
tire.
Yep.
When I went and raced with that bigger chain link tire, I thought that you get your pull bar too stiff and it really gets erratic, and that might be more, to be honest with you, more of a spring bar type of car, in my opinion. So, but the newer spring bars, I think you can still limit the travel so it doesn't travel 3 inches like we used to back in the way.
Yeah, no, that's very correct. And you see in those cars, you do see spring bars more often than you do in some of the other divisions. And the new spring bars, while you can limit that travel, like Jordan just said, once upon a time when we were getting 3 inches of travel, that was just crazy. So now that we're limiting that travel, and we're still, in my opinion, if you can get 1.25 inches of movement, well, hey, there's Chad.
He's alive. Oh my God, it's Weirzy.
He's on the couch.
What a night! I'm on the couch. Yeah, I was at headquarters. Power's out. Manufacturing's a mess. Had to shut everything down there. Send everybody home, and so here I am on the couch.
Well, we're glad that you made it. I mean, it's better to get the last 15 minutes than none, right?
Yeah. Right.
Yeah,
on.
I woke up from a nap.
Yeah. So tell me, what other than the weather, what else have you been doing, Chad? What's new and exciting from the weekend?
Not too much. Just been another busy week so far. Mondays and Tuesdays are always exciting with the crash repair from the previous weekend. So it's been a good couple days. A lot of things going on. So.
Hey, Josh furnished my stuff, so we got some Weird's machine back here, some GRT. Just throwing a plug at you, Chad.
Yeah, we just shipped you a whole load, didn't we?
Yeah, you did. You did.
He's actually been pretty good. He's given you about 3 plugs tonight, and nonchalantly. I mean, it wasn't completely intentional, you know. I mean,
he just sent me a whole bunch of boxes of free stuff from my race car.
Oh,
yeah. Right.
Just kidding.
Tell him the real truth. You'd rather pay for my stuff than run the other stuff, right? Isn't that what you always say?
That's right. That's right.
Well, you're just in time, Chad. Jeff's got a question. Is zero indexing left rear birdcage better on a rough or tacky racetrack on an IMCA modified?
Not on rough.
No, I wouldn't say so.
No.
That would be by far better on a slick. Logan's got a question. Left side weight on a GRT modified. How much is too much? Also, what is the effect of too much?
Seems like without the driver, you want to be around that 53%, 52.5, 53 is what the kind of the standard is. I think if you get just too much left side weight, makes the car tight, and that's why all these new late models and everybody's moving the drivers over to the middle of the car, trying to free our cars up, especially with our crate engines. But back in the day with our old open motors, we put as much left side weight as we could in them, but that's my opinion. Let Chad answer.
The left side weight, the secretary here wants you to know, Chad, it's better late than never.
Yeah.
Anyway, what we have found in the past that sometimes too much left side weight can make the car maybe a little on the skatey side, where it just doesn't really get on the right like it should. If you can get it to the point where it runs good going in, more left side weight is traction off. But the problem is you really got to focus on corner entry and mid corner, and sometimes corner exits really, it's third on the list because you got to get the other two right to make that one work the way it's supposed to. So as a rule of thumb with the driver, myself, we usually try to stay close to that 54% range. I know depending on the size of the driver. 54 to 55 is pretty decent. I think that's pretty neutral.
Yep.
So we haven't even saved many questions for you, Chad. Is there a good way to break in a Hoosier G60 without taking them to the track? I don't think I know how you would do that.
I think
About 20 years ago in the Sportsman, when we were racing Sportsmans 20 years ago, we put them on our street vehicle and went up and down the highway and broke them in that way.
I didn't have much air in them either, did you?
No.
I've always, in my mind, a brand new tire, no matter what, in the Hoosier, it's always better, in my opinion. So you just run brand new in the Hoosier stuff. Now, I know the American Racers, seems like if you can run them a, session and scuff them, it seems like they're maybe just a hair better then. But my opinion is run them brand new.
You buff them when they're new, right?
Yeah, buff them, sipe them, and run them brand new.
Yeah, I wouldn't even break it in. I mean, just do what you said.
Yep.
Scuff it up so it's buffed, so you get all that stuff off of it, and they're good to go. Right. And that seems to be the best way I've found. And like you said, that American Racer tire, that's a tire that likes a heat cycle, and then it comes into play. The Hoosier tire, I would have the least heat cycles you can. The better. They do not get better with age.
Right.
Chad, I heard you say to use moly grease, not synthetic, on birdcage bearings. Could you explain why?
Well, when I was talking about using the the thick stuff was on the axle tube between the bearing and the axle tube to keep the water from going inside the suspension cage. The bearings come with a synthetic grease in them. In our bronze stuff, we always use synthetic, but the non-synthetic moly stuff was between the bearings.
Okay. Are stock car suspensions overall changing, particularly the rear?
Are they? Yeah.
I don't think they're changing much, are they? Well, I mean, other than, you're seeing, I mean, the lower arms, you can adjust certain angles into them. And from what I have seen of some of the stock cars that were pretty quick, their left rear is about a 20-degree angle and their right rear is probably about an 8.
Right.
Which is very similar to like what we would run on a sport mod. So, but as far as the suspension, they're keeping that pretty restricted. I mean, I think they're doing a good job with that. Using a load stick, what are good starting points on a stock car?
I can't honestly answer the question. I've never done it.
I have no idea.
I have no idea. 100 pounds of bite, get your ride heights right.
That's one of them things you got to go to your chassis builder.
Yeah. I'd call Mr. Shryock tomorrow. He's won 2 races in a row now with his stock cars. So it sounds to me like he might be the ideal guy to answer that question.
And he knows that answer.
Oh, yes. No doubt. How soft a spring is too soft on the right front of an IMCA stock car? And Jordan, was you born faster than everyone else?
Said born faster.
Yeah. You'd have to probably call his mom. I don't know how fast that was. You remember? You probably don't remember 31 years ago, do you?
They just told me I was an oops.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, my brothers and sisters are quite a few years older than I am, and I remember my mom, I used to ask her about that, and she says, we still haven't figured that out. Well, as I got older, well, were they thinking? They had to have figured it out. I mean, I know how this all worked out.
That's awesome.
But anyway.
To answer his question, I don't think, I have not personally had any luck going, we're in that 9 to 11 range. Seems like if you get lower than 9, it really gets tricky and never had any luck. So we bounced from that 9 to 11 range in the right front.
That sounds like a pretty common number that we hear across the board also. 350-pound right front spring in a modified. Would it work in a sport mod? Boy, I'd be pretty hesitant. The thing with a modified, you can, some of them guys can get by with some of that soft stuff, which sometimes I'm not so sure isn't still too soft. But knowing the load numbers and how you can preload everything with a modified compared to the sport mod, if you could run a slider in the rear where you could preload the left rear spring to kind of go along with that right front package, but I don't. I think a 500. We've had success with a 500. I've not really went much lighter or tried much lighter. We're going to experiment with a little bit, but 350 pounds on a 2,500-pound race car is pretty light.
Right.
Since you can't, if you could preload it, and even with a 350-pound spring with a lot of preload in it, it still only is a 350-pound spring. So I think that would be pretty light.
Agree.
So did you get any hail damage then, Chad?
The hail was pretty small. I seen a downed tree. I seen a downed tree on the way home, and I tipped over a Porta John, and my front mat is in the neighbor's yard, and his park bench is flipped over. So I got a little work to do when I get down here. But
no, that was from the weather, not from the other stuff that's been going on around the country.
From the weather, yeah.
Weather.
No riding.
Okay.
Yep.
I was gonna say, I was hoping it didn't hit up there.
No.
When you buy a new G60, is there a better way to gauge the tire size to get stagger you're looking for?
I think like an 85.5, on the right rear is about the biggest right rear that I've seen. 85.5, 85. We're talking about a Hoosier, correct?
Yeah, the IMCA, the G60. Well, I'm assuming it's the G60. Yeah, he doesn't say, but I'm guessing it is.
What I think a lot of people miss is the 19 and 20 series. A lot of people still don't understand that. We run 19 series on our left rears and 20 series on our right rears just to definitely make sure we do get the stagger that we want.
Yeah, and that. Overall, you get, 2.5 inches is a pretty common number when you use a 19 and a 20.
Correct. Yep.
Anything new products since last week, Chad? Or are you about ready to announce that new one here pretty soon, or is that next week now?
We're getting close. I had a couple things. I had a couple things sitting there to talk about, and then I ran out with the storm and left them at the headquarters there. But I was going to talk about the shock guards, the partnership with Ricochet. We took over the manufacturing of that and made an aluminum base and kind of modified his plastic part. So just kind of improved on that, and we've taken over the manufacturing and distribution of that. So that was the one piece I had to show tonight, and I left it lay there. So
awesome. Jesse's got a question. Are you familiar with the higher left side, lower rear percent? 55 to 56 left side and 53 to 54 rear. I'm not super familiar with it, but the car would have to have some type of abrasion, or I would think with the high left side weight. As long as you can get the car to get in, that high left side weight's going to help you get off, and you wouldn't need that rear percentage getting off. My biggest concern is, phase one of the corner, making sure that it navigates that okay. It appears that the left rear of the stock cars are getting higher. What's a good ride height on the left rear?
I think we go over the stock underneath the stock frame rail right on the left rear, and we start around 7 3/4 inches is where we start at, and then if we add wedge, obviously it goes up. But I think around that 7.5 to 7 3/4 underneath the stock frame rail is a pretty good. Now I know people are way higher than that, but I just haven't. We haven't found the luck or the feel that I really like getting higher than that.
Back to the stock car suspensions. Are the drive shaft lengths changing?
We changed our drive shaft length this year. Pat actually did put a longer yoke on it and a shorter drive shaft, just so we had more throw. We were a little worried about the shock rule not being able to keep the left rear in check like what we were last year. Because they got the new, you have to have 4.5 inches on the left rear. So we were a little worried about that and being able to control it the way we need to. Last year we could control it with the left rear shock. This year, the way they did the rules, we can't really control it as much.
And that's similar to like what you do on your modified yoke like that, correct?
Yep, it's about identical to the modified.
Yep. On a UMP A mod, for those percentages. Oh, okay. Jesse was saying the UMP. Well, with the UMP, you've got a whole lot better tire. So I could believe that a higher left side weight, because you're going to have a better side bite just because of the tire itself. So that would make a lot of sense. You wouldn't need quite the rear percentage just because, like I said, you've got the tire is a very good tire. Let's see here. Seen people adding weight on left rear axle tube. Is this a crutch for something else? Open B mod. Well, on an open B mod, if the rules allow, Chad, I think you can answer that question. I know we've talked about it before.
Yeah, putting weight on the axle, it adds traction, no doubt about it. The more, the better. But the more weight you put on the axle, the harder it's going to be to drive through the rough. So it's another one of them things where you're kind of dancing on the edge of disaster. But there's definitely an advantage to weight on the axle. It's traction, no doubt about it.
Okay, Bob, do you have any new tech videos getting released soon for the Race Tech Info program? I'll answer that question. We are constantly working. And Jerry, just so you know, the other guy that's behind the scenes with me, he hears me ask that question about 4 to 5 times a day. Are you done with this video yet? Are you done with that video yet? When are we going to be done with that video yet? So yeah, we are constantly working on some new stuff. And now that Garrett's here full time, you'll see some new stuff coming out here pretty soon. And then the rest of the question was, Chad, do you have any plans of doing any type of a more budget-friendly spring smasher for those of us on a budget? Thanks.
Well, I mean, we've had conversations about it. Our stuff is a not welded together frame. It's all machined perfectly square to the world. To make them machines function properly, I mean, you got to have everything perfectly square, and we just don't see it. You can buy something for $1,000 or $1,500, but I'm telling you, you're not going to get the true numbers. The fabricated stuff flexes, and I've watched our competitors' machines, fail in certain situations, and my goal here is to build the best equipment possible, and it's worth the money. We do have some used manuals in stock that are pretty reasonable right now. We got those for $2,500. So I don't have any intentions of making a cheap one that isn't going to work right.
Well, and Jerry, that's another one of those deals where you kind of get what you pay for, and I understand that budget thing. Boy, I'd probably convince another sponsor to get on board with you and help you out with that deal.
Buy one your rest of your life.
I mean, and that's the thing, it's just just like an intercomp digital tire gauge. I still have the same tire gauge that I used on Bobby's go-kart when he was 8 years old. And at the time, it was extremely expensive, but he's 32 now. So, when you figure out what I paid for that thing, and I've not had to send it in yet, all I've done is replace the batteries. Over the course of the time, it's actually less costly to spend the money and get something good than it is to try to buy something less expensive that really isn't going to do you the job. We're running on our 8 o'clock thing. We'll go a little over because I don't want Chad to feel like he completely missed out on everything. Left front rules would allow you to run a lift bar. What?
If rules.
If left front. Duh. All right.
If rules.
It's getting closer to the 8. The rules allowed you to run a lift bar with a 6th coil on it on an A mod, or stay with a pull bar, and why? I will let Jordan answer this one because we were talking about this before break. Lift bar and a modified.
Well, I know a lot of the USMTS guys and stuff are on torque arms, and I was on a torque arm before.
And this guy's got a UMP modified.
Right. I think for UMP, USMTS and stuff, I think that that's the direction that I would probably enter. But I know a lot of pull bars are winning races, but it just seems like the lift arm cars are maybe just a slight, maybe a little more consistent. But maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. We had really good luck with it in the IMCA world until they took it away from us. So, but definitely easier to drive a lift arm car, in my opinion. Gets on the right front and a lot more stable.
Next question, an IMCA modified, what's the most significant, or like your number one pick that you would change going from a tacky racetrack to a dry slick track? What would be the number one thing you'd change on your car? If you ran a heat race and it was heavy, what would you change for a dry slick condition?
Probably just the left rear spring load. We always seem like we run more spring load when it's heavier to try to free the car up, and then when it gets slicker, we start backing the left rear load off with the stock rear left rear springs that we're running these days.
And see, and that's the thing that a lot of people get confused. Like when you put more spring load on the left rear, what it actually does is it takes load and side bite off the right rear tire. So it allows the car to actually turn better getting in. Now you would think that it coming off the corner, that spring is going to be a better job for you because it's going to be stiffer with the additional load. But once again, it's all about phase 1 and phase 2 of the corner, and phase 3 is by far the third thing in line. So you actually back that load down when the racetrack gets dry. Number one, your racetrack's slowing down. It's probably dropped off a second or 2 seconds, and you need to side bite in that right rear. So backing that load off that left rear gives you additional side bite on that right rear tire. So that's something a lot of people get confused on.
Yeah.
So this is a question about gear in an A-mod. Does it matter about track size when it's tacky and then goes slick? How do you change your ratio up or down, high or low, and why?
Well, when the track slows down, considerably, you definitely, especially with a crate engine, you don't have when you got to slow down for the corner and try to accelerate back. You definitely need to go, from like a 541 gear. It seems like you go up about 10 points when the track really slicks off and loses about 2 seconds. It's what it seems to be the common thing.
Okay, our last question for the evening is Chris has a comment here. He heard that some IMCA stock cars are running down to a 450 to a 500-pound right front spring. I've heard some guys that are trying that. I don't see a lot of them being from what I have seen, and I'm just going off of the GRT car and going off of the B&B car, that they've not had great success with those light springs.
Yeah,
So.
I haven't seen it either.
Okay, well, Jordan, it's been a great honor to have you on the show. I appreciate you coming on tonight. And sorry, Chad, that you were forced into missing a little bit of it, but you do look more comfortable on that couch than in your regular chair. So maybe next week we should just start on the couch. What do you think?
Yeah, maybe I'll just.
There you go. I don't think so. We missed you.
I don't know.
We had to come up
The
with all
family's
kinds
been pretty quiet here, so this went smoother than I anticipated.
Oh, you're saying that on a normal basis, it's not quite that calm there?
Yeah.
I find that hard to believe, but if you say so, I'll go with it. All right. Well, thanks, guys, and look forward to next week. Hopefully, next week we're going to try to get Rex Merritt on the show. I did call him today, but I must have missed him. It must have been after hours. We're going to talk about shocks and things like that. So I look forward to next week. Thanks again, Jordan. I sure appreciate you having you on.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks, Chad.
Thank you.